All right.
There's everybody.
All right, so I'm sure that you've all seen videos of climate activists screaming at the world leaders to promote change and climate change. Or you've seen climate change protesters blocking streets for seemingly no reason, trying to push their cause. I'm also sure that you've seen extremely high gas prices due to oil shortages and fuel costs going up. The question is, does anyone have a fix to these problems? No? What if I told you that I do have a fix to these problems, and it's nuclear energy? So, because within 50 or so years, or 200 years, or 2,000 years, we will run out of oil. And the climate change and the energy crisis are only getting worse over time. So, we need to approach a solution to the problem that can be as effective as possible. I plan to become a nuclear engineer in my career, and I've been very interested in nuclear energy from a young age. And I've looked at multiple studies conducted by some of the world's top nuclear engineers to culminate all this data into one conclusion. Even though there is a slew of misinformation surrounding nuclear energy, it is the best form of energy that humanity has for the future. So our main points to be looking at is why other sources of renewable energy aren't that good for the environment and aren't nearly as effective as nuclear, why there's so much misinformation surrounding nuclear energy and what the real facts are, and why nuclear energy is the best source of energy we have for the future. So with this roadmap in place, let's look at why other sources of renewable energy aren't as good as people would say they are. According to the World Nuclear Association, renewable energy is one of the most costly forms of energy, but doesn't produce nearly enough energy to support humanity as a whole. And even more so, things like solar panels, when they decay, they leave behind toxic heavy metals such as silver nitrate and mercury that will stay toxic until the sun burns out. Meanwhile, radioactive waste will be safe within 100 years or so. And then you have misinformation pushed by the oil lobbies to perpetrate fear among people so they don't want to go to nuclear energy. Events like Chernobyl or Fukushima are heavily blown out of proportion to help perpetrate this fear. And then they use, obviously, the big radioactive waste thing to push people away from nuclear energy. And we will run out of fossil fuels eventually. We don't know exactly when we will run out of fossil fuels, but it is just something that is inevitable. It will happen. So now with that in mind, let's look at let's clear some misinformation on why nuclear waste isn't that bad. So now, I'm sure from The Simpsons, you all think nuclear waste looks something like this. Glowing barrels of green goo that are highly toxic, and just standing next to it would have you drop dead. In reality, nuclear waste is much more akin to this. They are reinforced concrete and hardened steel casts that are nearly impenetrable and can survive almost any condition. Even nuclear researcher Kyle Hill, in one of his tours of a nuclear waste management facility, is even credited with kissing one of those casts and then quoted for saying he was more likely to die from the bacteria on the outside of the cask than he was from the radiation inside of the cask. So that is where your nuclear waste is, right there. But where is the waste from fossil fuels? That's where it is. It's in our lung, it's in my lungs, it's in your lungs, it's in the ozone around us, it's everywhere. The waste from fossil fuels is something that we can't manage at all, and we never will be able to manage the waste that's produced from fossil fuels. It will only just get steadily worse. There is no way to really stop it. But there is a way that we can help it. And that's by not using it as much and switching to nuclear energy. And then now that we know what the misinformation is, why is nuclear energy the best form of energy there is? Once again, according to the World Nuclear Association, nuclear energy is the most cost-effective energy when it comes to cost of producing nuclear energy to power output there is. Because nuclear energy runs off of an abundant element that is one of the most abundant elements on Earth called uranium-235. And it also it can also be ran by many synthesized elements, such as plutonium or thorium. And nuclear energy is also one of the cleanest forms of energy. The only byproduct of nuclear energy is nuclear waste, which can be managed extremely effectively. The only other byproduct that you'll see from the rising from the nuclear towers is steam, which is harmless to the environment as a whole. And also, nuclear energy can produce outrageous amounts of power. One nuclear reactor can power an entire city just by itself, and it's cheap power that is available to everyone. So now, with the solution in mind, we have covered why nuclear energy, why renewable forms of energy aren't as good as nuclear energy, cleared up the misinformation surrounding nuclear energy, and also looked at why nuclear energy is the best. So, even with all this misinformation surrounding nuclear energy is the best form of energy for the future. So what do you need to do? You need to talk about it. Clear up the misinformation surrounding nuclear energy. Get other people to speak about what happens so then they too can go out and talk to others and then help them realize why nuclear energy is the best form of nuclear energy out there. And then we can truly pave a way for humanity's future that isn't reliant on fossil fuels.